Tuesday, October 10th, 2023, meeting of the Farmington Public Schools Board of Education. Welcome, fellow board members and Dr. Delgado. Mr. Rich, may we please have a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Walker.
Present.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Ms. Weems.
Present.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Heinrich.
Present.
I myself am here. Dr. Blau.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Wonderful. Let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Walker.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Approval of the agenda. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
I move that the Board of Education approve the October 10th, 2023 regular meeting agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Ms. Weems. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right, this evening, we're going to move first to our recognitions. Dr. Delgado?
Thank you, Dr. Blau, and good evening, everyone. So we have two separate groups of students, and do we have our high school principals here, our administrators? If you want to come on up to the microphone there, we can ask for your assistance in passing this information out to our young people. Okay, the first group is our National Merit Scholarship recipients. So if we have our students who are National Merit Scholarship recipients, can you come on up to the podium? Let's give them a round of applause. Great. And we're going to ask you to read the names, but I'll give you a little blurb. So the National Merit Scholarship Corporation has announced the names of more than 16,000 semifinalists in the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. These students will have the chance to continue in the competitions for National Merit Scholarships worth more than $28 million collectively. According to the National Merit Scholarship website, to be considered for a Merit Scholarship Award, semifinalists must fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level of the competition. About 95% of the semifinalists are expected to attain finalist standing, and about half of the finalists will win a National Merit Scholarship, earning the Merit Scholar title. And with that, let me turn it over to our administrators, and they can read by name the students, and we have a certificate for you as well. And just as a reminder, we'll be taking a short break after the awards so we can celebrate with you and your children.
Okay. Hi, I am Chris Musner, principal at Farmington High School, and we have 6 National Merit finalists. So our first, I got to put my reading glasses on. Our first student is Sanjaya Dalatla. She is not here. Okay. Our next student is Riha Desai.
Come right in front of here. Yeah.
Our next student is Asher Hart. Our next student is Lydia Meisner. And we also have with us Grisha Hiplati. Not present. Okay. And then our final student also is not here, unfortunately, but Samarth Pujale.
Okay, and students from North, Shaman Gujraj. Jonathan Manela. Bjorn Brolin Olsen. Matthew Rye, and Angelina Sun.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to our students. Parents, don't be shy. You can take a picture with your administrators here as well. Thank you again, students. Our next group of students, if you want to make your way to the podium, the College Board created the National Recognition Programs to recognize academic achievement among student populations that are often underrepresented at the university level. The College Board National Recognition Program students have earned their recognition due to their academic achievements in school and outstanding performance on the PSAT, NMSQT, PSAT 10, and/or AP exams. There's a minimum of a 3.5 GPA and a score in the top 10% of students in Michigan on the PSAT. The award keys are for National African American Recognition Award, National Hispanic Recognition Award, NHRA. And so, once again, I'll ask our administrators to invite our wonderful young people up and to present them with their recipient award. Let's give them a round of applause. And parents, don't be shy.
Adriana Bohannon, Eugenio Camino Cantu, Lana Shea Serban Eckhoff, Sydney Cole, Camille Fels, Brianna Jamefi, Tyrese Redway, Kira Rhodes, and Brian Rivers.
Thank you. And from Farmington High School, we have Brandon Dale. Next, we have Naomi Edwards. We also have Sanjay Gorm. Isabella Torres. And we have Ashley Kuchabi. Not sure. I just want to make sure I said it one. And Naomi Edwards. Congratulations.
And once again, congratulations to all of our NAARA and NAAHRA winners. Congratulations, students.
We will now take a short recess to congratulate our award recipients. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have items from the president. We thank you for your interest in attending or viewing our FPS Board of Education meetings. The Open Meetings Act requires that all meetings of the Board of Education be held in public. As a result, our meetings are the only place and time that we as a full board can legally work together on district matters. While these board meetings are held in public for the purpose of full transparency, they are not public meetings. While you are welcome to attend our board meetings in person or watch from elsewhere, we must take the time needed to address, discuss, and hear presentations on all matters of importance to our work for the district. We, the members of the FPS Board of Education, together with our superintendent, agree to abide by the following standards of behavior when interacting with one another, both during our board meetings and elsewhere, even when we disagree with one another's points of view. They are: listen actively, no sidebars, respect people and ideas, presume positive intent, use electronic devices respectfully and stay engaged, listen to learn, not to defend, and be brave, be vulnerable. They're posted on the wall by the door, and we have them in front of each of us during the meetings. We thank our community members for abiding by these standards of behavior as well. Okay, I'd like to point out that the toast to education that is produced or put on by the Education Foundation, the Farmington Hills Education Foundation, is going to be held Friday, November 3rd, 2023. There is a VIP reception from 6 to 7, and then the event is from 7 to 9:30. The money that is raised is used to fund scholarships and all different kinds of programs in our school district. And we hope that many of you will join us for what is always a lovely evening. We have a special band that performs during a Toast to Education that is comprised of current and former teachers who are musicians. So that's an added bonus to being there. So I hope that many of you will be able to join us at the Toast for Education on November 3rd. All righty. It has been a very exciting couple of weeks with games and concerts and auditions and all sorts of things beginning to percolate in our district as it does this time of year. And without further ado, I will turn this over to our secretary for our items of correspondence, Mr. Rich.
Thank you. The board has received communications about the presentation for MSTEP results, a different take on things through competition, an invitation to the Farmington High School's orchestra concert on October 30th, Head Start programs, and the community dialogue. The board acknowledges communications and responds when appropriate. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, accessible on the Farmington Public Schools website.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Next, we have our legislative update. Mr. Rich.
I will just keep going.
Yes.
So the big one that I wanted to focus on right now is something that I've been discussing for the past few board meetings and have been talking about since the state legislature came into session, which is House Bill 4752, which was just signed into law today. So that's permitting retired educators to resume teaching without losing retirement benefits. And so previously, retirees had to wait 9 months before returning to work in schools, or they were at the risk of losing their retirement benefits. And so this is intended to kind of combat the teacher shortage, as well as ensure that we are able to keep good experience going while, there are still limits as to how much they're able to earn while still regaining their retirement. But it's a good step forward and something that's kind of an innovative way to bring back some of that education experience into our districts across the state. So that was just signed into law earlier today. And so I've been talking about that for the last few, but that's all I wanted to talk about today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Rich.
Thank you.
Next, we have our district updates. Dr. Delgado.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. A few updates for me, and welcome to October. So first of all, October is National Principals Month, and so we want to thank all of our tirelessly working principals, as well as our assistant principals, for all that they do. The job of a principal has changed dramatically over the last 30 years, and so from building manager to instructional leader to supporter of social safety nets and all of the important things we do, including now overseeing safety and security measures in our schools. So the role is tremendously taxing, at times thankless, but we have wonderful, dedicated people who love children and love supporting their families. So thank you to all of our administrators in the Farmington Public Schools. I had the opportunity, as Dr. Blau mentioned, there's a lot of activity now in schools, and the last 2 weekends, my wife and I were able to join both Farmington High School and North Farmington High School's homecoming weekends, football games, as well as parades and rivalries, and so we truly enjoyed not only the games, but the camaraderie. Our student sections were outstanding, well-behaved, and they coordinated their chants with their administrative teams. They were respectful, they represented our community well, and they were packed. The stadium was packed to really celebrate our teams. We know that this year, unfortunately, we were not able to have North Farmington High School play against Farmington High School because they changed divisions in the Oakland Activities Association, but we are committed to starting back next year of scheduling a non-league game to make sure that that crosstown rivalry gets reinstated moving forward. So, but we really enjoyed that. Also had the wonderful opportunity to attend the Black Student Union's first event at North Farmington High School, their block party, which was outstanding. So dancing and music and great food trucks and camaraderie and the students, and then they all kind of piled over to the football game. So a lot of hard work that went into the young people who organized that, as well as their sponsor, Mr. Goodrum. So I want to thank them as well. We also celebrated our Farmington African American Parent Network started back Saturday, Super Saturday tutoring. So I was there along with many other board members and community members flipping pancakes and helping our students. So that is a wonderful program that is free to all students, and we are welcoming to any volunteer who wants to come and help tutor. We certainly have quite a bit of need as the school year goes on, and we welcome your support of that tutoring program. We have many other, tutoring has been a topic that's come up at the board. We have many other tutoring options throughout our K-12. At the elementary, we continue to have individualized tutoring, one-on-one tutoring support before, after school, at lunchtime with students. We have invested heavily in our middle schools through both general fund as well as grant monies. The 11T funding that we have, as well as some of the ESSER money we've allocated $400,000, $100,000 to each of our middle schools through the 11T grant money to reach over 200 students who are in need for tutoring. We have a very organized system of our multi-tiered system of support where teachers and parents can work with school officials to identify students who are in need early as they get into this first marking period and the first progress reports, and they are referred to this high dosage tutoring that we're doing as well. This morning, my cabinet and I were at the high school level, and we are actually at North Farmington High School on one of our instructional walkthroughs. We go to every single school in this district, every classroom, and we support our teachers, we meet with our students, and we got our first glimpse of the brand new IST time, which actually I'll step back for a moment. This came out of our student roundtable communication. So you may be aware that here in the district we have the superintendent roundtable with our students. We have 30 students from our 3 high schools who give us feedback, and we have board representatives who've been on this panel. The students themselves told us that they wanted to see more support from a tutoring standpoint, from a reteaching standpoint, a reassessment standpoint throughout the week. So we listened to our students. The high school administrators revised their format, and now we have 2 days a week of this block period where students can travel to other classes to get support. And so it starts in a homeroom class, and then they are allowed to move to another location. We saw students reteaching, reassessing, teachers at their whiteboards reteaching concepts in every content area you could see. So the entire high school communities are embracing this effort as the main focus at high school for that tutoring intervention. However, in addition, we're exploring even more high dosage tutoring with the grant monies that we have permissible as we get into the high school progress report season and the end of the first marking period to really intervene. So I know there's been some conversation about it. We're doing a lot, and we're supporting students, and so we're proud of that effort. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, today is World Mental Health Day on October 10th. And so the purpose of this day is to draw awareness of the importance of maintaining not only your physical health, but your mental health, as well as supporting students, supporting families, and erasing the stigma of mental health. You know, if you talk to doctors, they may mention if you have a heart issue or heart disease, you'd go see a cardiologist. But still in our community, we're reluctant sometimes to acknowledge a mental health challenge and to see a professional. We have tremendous supports in our schools with our excellent counseling staff, our restorative practices coordinators, our wonderful social work team, and so we try to do our very best to take care of our students and staff, and we'd encourage everyone to take care of yourselves as well, both physically as well as mentally. So very exciting time in the Farmington Public Schools with a lot of wonderful things going on, both academically and from an extracurricular standpoint. That's my update.
Wonderful. Now we have, did you want to move right into the strategic planning update?
And roll right into it.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
We'll invite to the podium our wonderful Dr. Kelly Coffin, our Assistant Superintendent of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation, as well as I see Mrs. Hendrickson, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, who will be up there next. We have a tag team of 2 presentations. So, Dr. Coffin, take it away.
All right, good evening, everyone. Very excited to be able to share with you our kind of the next iteration of our strategic plan. So one of the things when we think about our strategic plan and our process is that a strategic plan really helps us have a focus and a clear direction, helps all the processes, people, and programs heading in the same direction. It aligns those people and resources and translates strategy into focused action plans. And really, and most importantly, we have a lot of good intentions sometimes in an organization, and this really transforms this through the work of stakeholders for strong results for our students, our schools, and our community. So how did we get here? So I just wanted to give the board just a brief timeline of where we've been and then where we're going. So back in July of 2020, the current plan at the time was reviewed with what we had at that time as our district network team. That was a variety of leaders, both positional leaders and teacher leaders from across the organization. In September of 2020, then we were able to review, the leadership team was able to review the focus areas and identify some key performance indicators. Moving forward to January of 2021, this is where we had the relaunch. So we combined the 4 focus areas or goal areas of the past strategic plan and incorporated the other 4 for a total of 8. So fast forward to that work continuing through June of 2022. In May, as you'll remember, we completed our profile as part of our strategic planning process, and that incorporated the equity audit results that we received at that time. And then from September of 22 to June 23, we were able to complete 2 of the 8 goal areas, moving to 6 goal areas, and then also worked on our mission and vision refresh, which was completed in August of this year. So as you can see, these are our mission and vision along with our profile of a lifelong learner. Our profile represents our commitment to our community, and our vision and mission are action-oriented and reflect the work that we as a district are committed to do for all those involved. I wanted to share with the board how the strategic plan has really helped to build our district instructional anchors. So we think about our promise to our community through our profile, but also our instructional focuses really focus on positioning, authenticity, and noticing when we think about our work with our adults and with the students we serve. And then in addition to the promise to our community, our instructional focuses, we have our learning framework, which is coming directly from what we have learned from the needs of our past strategic planning initiatives, really thinking about how intentional are we with our authentic learning through technology model. So a little bit about the process. So stakeholder feedback. So again, how did we get to here? Our stakeholder feedback, we gathered that in spring of 2023. We had in-person meetings, we had virtual meetings, we had with a variety of stakeholders, met with students, so we received a lot of feedback. Those themes were identified, and from that we've now have 4 what we're calling the strategic initiatives, which do serve as our goals. In order to better explain what those strategic initiatives means, our leadership teams met, and I'm going to share with you those focus statements that came out of that work. This work was facilitated by KnowledgeWorks and Ms. Laura Hilger. Goal area committees and leadership has been identified, and there was a survey that has been shared, and I think we have about 60 community members who have already signed up to be part of one or of many committees, so we're really excited about that. And those committee meetings will be starting this month. So these are the 4, moving forward, our 4 strategic initiatives. Again, these came from the themes that were found across all of the different types of stakeholder groups. So it wasn't just from one or the other. These were things that were consistent in all of our community stakeholder groups. The first one is collaborative professional learning that supports equity and innovation. A culture of equity and innovation, that's a continuation of a goal that we had the last 3 years. Health and wellness through social and emotional learning, and then innovation for teaching and learning. So I wanted to just give the board a brief update on those focus statements that best describe each of these strategic initiatives. So when we talk about focusing on collaborative professional learning that supports equity and innovation, we're talking about it from a systems lens. And how do we become a system that works collaboratively, is inclusive of all learners and voices, and builds the capacity of all staff when we think about innovative and equitable practices. So when we talk about the collaborative professional learning, that's what we mean by that. In thinking about a culture of equity and innovation, this has been something since I joined the district that had been worked on in the past and continues to come up as something that is important to our community. So when we talk about this culture of equity and innovation, we mean that creating a sustainable, intentional systems that support equity and innovation, and create a culture that expects and allows for equity and innovation. So that's the focus statement that goes with that goal area or that initiative. Next, we have health and wellness through social and emotional learning. This really is focusing on the physical and emotional well-being of students, staff, and families, and how are we expanding our own awareness, not only of our own needs, but the needs of our students, and how do these become part of our daily practices. And finally, innovation for teaching and learning. Many of you might remember the FPS Futures Committee. So this continued to be something that all stakeholders were interested in continuing. So how are we going to work with our community to create unique learning experiences, not only within the classroom, but also beyond the classroom? And through designing these authentic, meaningful, and again, inclusive learning experiences as we continue to focus on continuous growth and improvement. So started with 8 goals, moved to 6. We are now at 4 goals defined as our strategic initiatives, as well as our focus statements that came from the feedback from our community on what they believe was important for us to focus on. So next step, as I said, the committee members' invitations will be coming out for our October meetings, and just appreciate everyone who's already signed up. There still is time. There's a Google form that they can complete to be able to put their name on there and any of their interest, and we will reach out to them. As I said, goal committee meetings will meet in October, and we will continue the board updates, in the spring of the year on the progress throughout the school year. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Smith?
How many committees can you sign up for, and is this a 5-year strategic plan?
So this is a 3 to 5 year plan. Yes, correct. And as many as people want to be on. So we have some people that have expressed interest in all. Usually what happens is they come to the ones that fit in their schedule. We're following the same format of they're 1 hour, they're held virtually, and they're held in the late afternoons, early evenings. Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Dr. Koff.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
And we are next.
Next up, we have our spring assessment data snapshot. Once again, we have Mrs. Margaret Hendrickson, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, to join Dr. Coffin.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and jump right into our spring assessment data. So as the board will remember, this is something that we've done traditionally. Once we get this spring assessment data, we usually get that back in mid-August, give us some opportunities to look that over and then present to you that information. Got it. So today, the purpose of this, and we could talk about data forever, as we know that, but today's purpose is really specific about sharing the performance and the highlights from our spring state assessments, and also to revisit the work that we are doing, the action we are taking in literacy and mathematics for this 23-24 school year.
Each year, as we look at our performance data on the MSTAT, the PSAT, on the SAT, we do always notice some variability in proficiency from grade level to grade level, from subject to subject, or test types, because MSTAT, PSAT, SAT are different assessments. As we look at this year's performance relative to the county, relative to last year, we do notice that we're sitting pretty relatively flat in terms of our comparison to last year, with some noticeable exceptions that we'll point out later in the presentation. As always, we are sitting at or above the county in our performance in the subject areas, and we are always consistently above the state. As we look at our prior data around NWA and MSTEP, literacy and College Board assessments, literacy does continue to be a relative strength as compared to mathematics, and that is something that we are consistently looking into.
One of the things that we will share with the board this year is our focus on opportunity gaps. We talk a lot about performance and how our students perform and proficiency. But what we are focusing on is where do opportunity gaps, just those gaps for some students to have access to higher level learning. Which students have that and which are we finding don't have the access that we believe that they need to have. So when we start to think about those gaps, one of the things is we're watching specific subgroups. So we wanted to highlight a few of those this evening. So we find that when the students who qualify for special education, as well as English language learner, I should say, or English language learners, we do see gaps when they are compared with all FPS students, as well as when we compare with our county peers. When we look at students who are economically disadvantaged, what we're finding is that we see gaps in their learning when we compare them to FPS students. However, we see that they're performing at or above their county peers. In addition, when we look at our African American students, we do see a gap again, similar to what we saw with economically disadvantaged here in FPS, but we don't see that, and they actually outperform their county peers. So those are some of the areas that we are watching as far as from an opportunity gap lens. In addition, our Farmington online performance was below the district performance depending on grade and grade level and grade band. That's a small number tested, so as you can see, the board can see, we had 48% proficiency in ELA across all those tested areas, 30% proficiency in math. So this chart speaks to a little bit about what we were talking about in the previous slide. You can see here that we focus on proficiency, But it's really about, we are in the, are able to close, we have been able, to close that performance gap when we look at all subjects. So this chart represents the M-STEP proficiency for all grades combined from 2009. Farmington is the blue line. Our peer districts, which are Oakland County districts, is the green line. And then all LEAs, as well as public school academies, are represented in the yellow line. So you can see there,
Sorry, can you just tell us what LEAs means?
local education agency, right?
Thanks.
So all districts, school districts, and PSA charters. Thank you. So you can see there in 2022, that is where we were able to close the gap that had existed for, since at least 2012, if I'm looking at that right, or 2011. So that's why the focus now is on the opportunity gaps. And these are for all students. So this is how we compare to our peer districts for all students, grades 3 through 8 on the M-STEP.
As we've been sharing with the board, our last year's NWA performance is relatively consistent with the state assessment we saw in the spring, with a few exceptions that we'll talk about a little bit later. We have long committed, as an instructional services department, that in order to move students to higher levels of proficiency, and in order to reduce opportunity gaps, we really have to take a look at the instructional practice, structures, and systems that are part of Tier 1, 2, and 3. And in all of that work, our intentions are, our planned work, is to increase growth for each and every student. If we don't grow students, if students don't learn new things, then they can't move in their proficiency levels from not proficient to proficient to all those levels. I mixed it up in my head. Thank you. So with the focus of growth, which has been our work, we plan to move students in their proficiency. And so the state data kind of confirms the data that we've been seeing across NWEA.
Simon?
Can you just give a quick explanation, Tier 1, 2, and 3?
Yep. So Tier 1 is your initial instruction in the core content in a classroom. Tier 2 is when students need additional extension, additional time on grade level, or some intervention support. It's additional instruction that get another dip of time with teacher and or someone outside of the classroom to support their growth. Tier 3 are students who have been in Tier 2 that aren't quite making growth with that support, get some more intensive support at Tier 3. It might be smaller group instruction, it might be one-on-one, and generally that sits outside of the classroom.
Are those all things within our control during the school day?
Mm-hmm. So our teaching and learning is really built on a multi-tiered system of support, and in that, it's like a triangle. It's everyone gets Tier 1, and then as students are experiencing Tier 1, the main instruction, we respond to their needs through additional time with teacher or instruction and intervention. And the more kids don't respond at a particular level, we add additional supports for them.
Yes, Ms. Smith.
So, make this make sense for me. So if those students that are on Tier 3, how is that taking away from Tier 1 and 2 educational-wise with the instruction time with the teacher? So is there someone else in there to help them as well? So then my next question is, how does a student, so let's say that's a fourth grader, and they see that they're not at the same level as Tier 1 or 2. How does that keep a student from being looked at in a discriminatory way of being teased and taunted?
You want to take that one?
So when we think about the tiered support, that's a great question as far as how does that support look and then how is it managed from the student's perspective. So Tier 1, we would expect that 75% of our students can learn at or above grade level through that Tier 1 support. It's once they have the tier 1 and we're still, that 25% then is what we're talking about for tier 2 and tier 3. So tier 1, they get the tier instruction. Tier 2, they get the tier 1 plus additional time with the teacher, probably in small groups, so still within the classroom. So it's once they've gotten the tier 1 instruction as well as the tier 2, we start to look at additional tier 3, which may be an additional person in the classroom, it may be one-on-one, it may be a very specific skill. And then all of that data also helps inform us that if maybe there's something that we're missing and maybe there's a disability that we need to look into for the child, but not until we've done all of those supports to make sure.
So sorry.
I apologize, I was once going to wait, but seems like some healthy discussion. I would like to go back a couple of slides to the state assessment overview. I'm super happy that, nope, the chart,
Go forward.
trend line, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that we've closed the gap between FPS and peer district. And I see an upward trend, at least in the past couple of years, and I'm hoping that's reflective of the work that we've been hearing related to tiered systems of support, ISTs, which I am getting fabulous feedback on. I've got high schoolers, in case I know that the rest of the board doesn't have high schoolers right now, but I'm hearing really good feedback on that. I know that there have been several evaluations of programs that we've been looking at in our workshops. So that's all good news, and I'm assuming that's helping us trend back in the right direction. However, I am definitely concerned about the overall trend across FPS and our peer districts and the state with respect to proficiency being, moving from the 50 to 60%. To 40 to 50%. And so I guess I've asked this question before, and you guys have really helped me understand realistically there are no 6-week programs that are going to get someone, a year or two worth of growth. That just doesn't exist. But what should be the goal, and how long will it take us to get there to see some sizable, trending back up to and above the 50 to 60% mark? And I don't expect anybody to have an answer there, but I'm just sharing what my concerns are.
We can share a few thoughts.
Yeah, just as you look at this particular data, starting in about 2010, we had new set of state standards come into play, which then resulted in a shift from MEP to MEP, which was a very different assessment type in terms of the level of rigor in the questions being asked, where kids have to make meaning and apply their understanding. And so this dip that we start to see between, I believe it was 24 and that 25, was the shift in the assessment. So the whole system saw a difference. And then you have years of adjusting to the new standards with new adoptions of resources, and then living through those implementations and adoptions. And then we move into the pandemic, which obviously made a dip and a step up. In terms of establishing what's a realistic goal in terms of how much you can grow every year, it is really hard to put a number on that. But I am never comfortable if there's no growth and if there's not significant growth. So I always feel urgency. If we're going up 5, 8, 10%, yeah, that feels good because it's better than the prior year, but it's not where we want and need to be for all of our students. And so it's a really hard, some districts will write, we want to see a 15% gain, or we want to see a 10% gain, or we want to see an 80% gain. That's why we focus so much on each and every child and looking at their growth. Because if we don't look at each and every child and see whether growth is happening, we're never going to see a shift in proficiency. And we have a lot of work to do in terms of making sure our multi-tiered systems of support has coherence, consistency of implementation and support and resource, that we've really monitored that and revised and shifted as needed. We're not fixing cars. We're not making, we're not tweaking. We're supporting souls here and hearts and souls of individuals. And so there's never going to be a goal that I'm comfortable with in terms of setting a number. Not comfortable with sitting flat. I want us to see us continue to grow, and I'd like to see 100% of our kids proficient. So it's hard to set a goal and say X number of years because it creates work, creates reflection, and innovation in order to do that.
One thing I see Claudia. One thing I want to make sure that, another thing that I don't think we called out is, we talk about multi-tiered systems of support. We often focus on those struggling, but it's also for acceleration. And so this is the first year where the MTSS team is really looking from a systems lens. How do we provide accelerated opportunities as well in a more intentional, in a systemic way? So that's a new piece to this, but that, Ms. Weems, is really what's going to help move our system, or move everyone up, is when we're making sure we're meeting all the needs, like Margaret said, each and every, but there had been a lot of support on kind of the supporting the tier 2 and tier 3 on the struggling side, but not necessarily on the accelerated. So we anticipate that's going to help.
Thank you.
Thank Claudia.
I'm really glad you pointed out that piece of the accelerated, because you're right, we always focus on the students that are struggling, and what about those other kids?
Yep.
And they kind of sometimes do okay, but they could do better.
Yep.
I'm glad that you brought this back up, because the big dips, I mean, you can Google anything, and then my computer died. But 2015-16, we switched from the ACT to the SAT.
As well.
So we used that big dip there, so the type of test. And you're right, 2014-15, they switched from the ME to the MSTEP. And I just remember when those new tests were coming in, how we had to adapt and figure it out. And then the next big dip is the COVID. And I was just going back, and I was like backtracking. It's like the juniors that are reflected on this test, they were freshmen during 2021 school year. And so they were 8th graders in March when the world shut down, and they were freshmen when school started remote. And so we really didn't know. We didn't have a framework for the pandemic on what to do, and we didn't know the outcomes. And so the question is, we want quick results, but it's like, how long does it take? And so my question is, do we have to look and see, like, until our first graders that were affected get through, or can we close the gap? My experience, as an algebra teacher, as I'm looking at this, while freshmen would be taking Algebra 1, and when the school shut down, and so they were remote and things like that, and then, their sophomore year, they were taking geometry. It was a little bit not really normal school, so their first normal school year was 22-23, and so, they're in Algebra 2, but you can't teach Algebra 2 when the kids are in Algebra 1, which it's reasonable to expect that they didn't get the skills that they needed. So how are we making up those gaps? And we want to demand that you hurry up and get everything fixed, but we don't know how long it's going to take or what it's going to take.
Yeah, and the purpose of sharing this slide tonight was so you can see that for all of our students, we are been able to close that proficiency gap. Now that's why our focus is on the opportunities. And what opportunities do each of our students have? And are there places where we're finding that they're not even having access to some higher level learning? And that's something we can control. And that's something we as a system can control.
Mr. Walker and then Ms. Smith?
I'd just like to offer, too, that while I certainly appreciate and understand the importance of the test and these test assessments, that and the gaps that have come through all of the different experiences that we've had over time, that still doesn't mean that our kids aren't learning. And we cannot look solely at this particular piece of data and make a general assumption that our kids are not learning, that they don't have the tools necessary to leave this district and be successful. So I just want to make sure that we keep that as a part of our framework, continue to work, continue to look at the trouble spots without a doubt, but also remember that the kids are still learning, they're still functioning, they still know how to handle whatever the business happens to be. These tests don't necessarily assess for critical thinking skills. They don't necessarily deal with problem-solving skills. And so it's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot.
And so we need to keep that in mind as we continue to work towards, because I understand that the tests are a part of the system, and the system dictates how we have to move and how our students have to move and matriculate through the educational system, college, so forth and so on. But that doesn't mean they're not learning. And I just need to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Ms. Smith?
Are you working with, because it says comparison to our county peers, so I do know that you do work very closely with other districts and have those conversations. What are you finding that is, what is really wrong? Because earlier on you mentioned our minority students, they're not really proficient because they're not financially healthy. To a degree,
Well, it was just interesting to see that we had a bigger gap within our system.
Right.
Than we did out. And so those are things that, and to Mr. Walker's point, we're sharing this information as part of just the snapshot, as you mentioned. But it's really about what are the things that we'll get to, in the next few slides, about what is it we are doing that we can control to ensure that our kids
So where I was going with that is other districts on the other side, they are not financially healthy and their students are thriving and their tests. So is there any way that you can collaborate with those districts? I mean, because when I hear financially unhealthy, well, that's my term. We look at apartments. Most of our students that live in apartments, their rent is more than my mortgage, So I don't know if it really has anything to do with their finances. It makes me wonder, why is one district, I don't want to name any district and give out no shout outs, but I don't, my concern is, and I understand, everybody cannot test and test well. They may be really good in the classroom, but when they get that test, they freeze. So what is it that they're doing that is making their test scores a little bit higher than ours? And is there any way that you can collaborate with those districts? I know that you work very hard with going to other districts and having conversations, but, what are they telling you? What are they doing? I mean, is it, the tutoring like we do with VIII, or is it pizza days, or, is it parents coming in? I want to know what we're doing that what they're doing that we're not doing, and their test scores may be just a tad higher.
Yeah, so I'm part of the teaching and learning group at Oakland Schools, and these are topics that we talk about monthly. And as a matter of fact, this year we're meeting for a full day and we're collaborating with our special ed colleagues. So for those exact reasons. So that's my goal, is to continue to speak to others who are, everybody's got something they're working through. So,
That's
it's been restructured specifically for that.
Can you go back to that slide that talked about economically, because I heard economically disadvantaged tied together with African American, and I don't think that slide was saying that.
No,
I just want clarification.
they're
Two different things.
they're separate.
You're saying you looked at our economically disadvantaged, and then you looked at our African American.
Yeah, so I
You didn't
can't,
tie them together.
and I don't know what the crossover is. This is just
it's
as there.
It's just, I thought that Ms. Smith tied those together, and I want to clarify that.
No, that's not what I was tying together.
Okay, all right, so, two people can hear the same thing from your equipment, so they.
Well, I made sure I clarified what I was saying. Thank you.
So as we dig in a little bit, we gave you some overall broad trends. At the back of the PowerPoint, you'll see the raw data visualizations. I won't walk through all of those, but what I will do is just make some overview understandings of what we know about our data. So this slide shares our literacy data, and you'll look at the overall performance for high school, middle school, and elementary. So you see the grade band overall proficiency at each of those levels, as well as the individual grade level performance. And this is consistent with the overall theme that we had of, we have a lot of variability between grade levels and their proficiencies across our system. And yet we still are at or above the county. We did notice that there were some surprises for us as we looked at the individual grade level data. We noticed and didn't expect our third grade to show a decrease, and then we saw our fourth grade do an increase. So when we looked back at our progress monitoring data of last year, we were a little surprised by that, but we will be speaking in a little moment what we're going to be doing specifically at the third grade level this year for this year's third graders as they move into fourth grade in the coming year. As we look at that NWA data and the MSTEP data being, and College Board data being very similar in what they show us, this is an overview of some pieces that we spoke to the board about last June when we did our progress monitoring update and shared our action steps for this year. So as we look about responding to the data, we think about what professional development might be needed at each grade band. We think about what shifts in structures we might need to do. And some of those examples are, we have K2 through 5 and middle school and high school literacy professional development. We have the letters training, our EL skills block training. We have specific learning going on quarterly with our secondary literacy instruction. We're continuing to use our computer adaptive reading program called Lexia. We've restructured our different supports, our tier 2 and tier 3 supports at the elementary and middle school, which are outlined there. We added a secondary MTSS coach who is strategically working with the high schools on their IST flex time to provide students with the individualized support that they need. And we always offer at the high school level a variety of course offerings to support students to meet them where they are at. As we think about our mathematics, again, just not to go through all of the pieces, but we have different percent proficients for each grade band, as well as the individual grade level performance, which is consistent with some of the variability we're seeing grade to grade. When we look at our grades 3 through 5 in math, we stayed pretty consistent with where we were last year on the MSTEP. And some of our progress monitoring data had us wondering whether that performance would stay as strong as last year, and we were able to stay as strong. And we actually saw a nice increase at our 6th grade year last year in the area of mathematics, and again, at and above the county and state. As we look at the work that we outlined last June, we're continuing to do a variety of professional development at each grade band, K through 12, which are outlined here. We're continuing to use that computer adaptive technology tool Dreambox, similar to Lexia. We've been restructuring our tier 3 intervention support models at different grade bands. And again, we have that MTSS coach at the secondary level that's really supporting that multi-tiered systems of support at the secondary level and really heavily supporting that IST and flex time, in addition to the variety of courses we have to meet students where they're at. I did want to mention, and I forgot to mention under the literacy is, with all of the work we're doing during the school day, Chris O'Brien, our Director for Student Support Services, has been working in progress monitoring the high dosage tutoring that we did last year with the different companies that we used, and has come up with a plan for this year where they are doing mentorship tutoring at both the middle school and high school, math and ELA. And those are after school, where we are using a virtual platform to support students through a tutoring model. The next few slides is just the data visualizations that we used to support developing our broad trends and patterns and highlights to the data. We just wanted the board to have all of that information at your disposal as well.
That's all we have.
That's all we have. If you have any other questions.
I don't have
Ms.
any
Weems?
more questions, but I do know that as a board, we've agreed that we wanted to review data on a regular basis, that we'll have, I think, at least a 3 or 4 time a year deep dive review. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's being incorporated into our next few either presentations, and so reflected on our agenda, and/or through our workshops. And I know that you're already all over that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we already have those quarterly reports scheduled. I do. Yes. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
Yeah, I just, we talked about this IST flex and Mrs. Williams said that her kids really like it, but could you just, I mean, I picked up that it's 2 days a week, it's a block. How long is the block?
65 minutes.
How long?
65 minutes.
65 minutes.
Yeah, I drilled my kids on this the other day, just trying to understand what was
It's
going on.
chunked up, so it's not
Yeah.
straight. They have some time with, so one thing that's different is we have a homeroom, or we call it a seminar at the high school, where students have been assigned to a teacher, and that will be the teacher that they work with for their high school career. So just to build that sense of community, so they spend some time there, and then they have a choice of where they need to go. And so that the students make that choice each week. Sometimes there might be a place where the teacher says, I need to see these kids, and they're going to come, and work with me. It might also be an opportunity, it is an opportunity where students know twice a week if they missed a test for some reason. They don't have to worry about when to make it up. They know that that's always an opportunity. I know that's some of the things that we saw today when we were walking through.
That is some of what I heard, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleased to hear you say what I heard.
Yeah.
That is consistent.
Yeah.
What I heard most was that I think this was done a bit last year, and that this year there were some changes made based on feedback from students. They are certainly feeling like their voices were heard,
Good.
which is outstanding. I'm really happy to hear that. They feel like they have more flexibility, they've got voice, they can go where they feel they need to go. There's some monitoring and some
Absolutely.
instruction. I think at some point it was a little bit more rigid, like you must be here first until they got the hang of it. They wanted to build that sense of community within that IST block, which I think was working, little resistance at first. I'm just giving you the feedback that I heard.
Yep.
And, the opportunity to either retake a test or, in some cases, they may use it to do some other, school-related activities that they wouldn't otherwise have time to do. So I just think it's wonderful,
Yeah.
and I'm really hoping that we see this reflected in, that this tutoring, this opportunity to have more one-on-one time.
Yeah.
It has created, at least from a mental perspective, a sense of, I have time built in to get the help that I need.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
One of the things we talk about is relationships, and so it sounds like if every student in high school has a
Yep.
homeroom teacher, then that's somebody that will get to know them, and they'll have
Yes.
them for the same, so they'll have the same student for the full 4 years.
For-
Oh, sorry. So
Yes,
they'll
if
have
they're
the
a
same
freshman,
student for the
yep,
full
so
4
they'll
years?
just
Okay.
continue through with the same.
So they'll get to know someone and establish a relationship with
Yes.
with that teacher, so that's a good thing. Can you talk a little bit more about, you said the after-school tutoring, and it's a virtual platform. Is this like interactive virtual, or is it just like looking at lessons?
They're synchronous online with a live person mentorship tutoring at both the middle school and high school. Some students will attend for mathematics, some will attend for ELA, and the students that enter that tutoring support will move through the MTSS process where students are, that support is what would help them the best.
And these are paid tutors that the district is paying for?
We've contracted with a company, K-12 Connect, in order to provide this service for our students.
Okay, and do they have like flexibility in when they can set up their meeting with this
I think
tutors?
there is. I don't know all the details. That work is being supported by Mr. Chris O'Brien and Student Support Services, so we could probably get some more information and maybe an updated board brief.
Sure,
So
I can
that-
just chime in that Mr. O'Brien and his team, we do have a couple of Farmington Public Schools teachers who are helping to coordinate that when students come through the MTSS system, and there is flexibility for them to set that time with the tutor for that live synchronous session with the tutor from the K-12 company.
And so are we tracking these students to see if it's effective?
Absolutely, and that's part of the MTSS process.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question, too, about the evaluation piece. I know you guys are doing a lot of that, and it sounds like you said Mr. O'Brien has already done some of that. I would be interested in kind of understanding where that's gone and understanding the effectiveness of the online tutoring. I think that's a great option for, students who may have, we all have, transportation barriers. would be interested in understanding how well that's working.
Yeah,
And-
and I think I can say, last year, we tried a few different models, and so what he found from those program evaluation is what he used to select this service, and what we found most successful, especially at our middle schools, that's where we had the most success for the online after school. And so then this company better meets the needs, if students need to work on their homework, they'll help them with that. So it depends on what their needs are. So it was based on some of the other feedback we received with other models.
So this is my last comment. I'm just going to do a real quick blurb or shout out to old school. A lot of what I'm hearing is being done, like with, after-school tutoring and homeroom. Seems like it's working. A couple other things that we used to do that I'm going to recommend we start doing again.
Homeroom 2.0.
Right, homeroom 2.0. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just have one question, and my question is, what is it about social studies? It seems like any school, any grade, it's always low. Is it because there's so much reading in social studies? Why is it that it tends to be low, whether it's Farmington Hills or any other school district?
Good question. We're all asking those same questions. I can tell you here in Farmington, since the last 2 years, we've been doing specific work with our high schools. We're starting with our high schools to really look at, they've done a lot of good job with the alignment of the standards, and we're looking at updating our resources and our instructional unit design to support students as they gauge in these new standards. Recently, we've adopted new social studies standards, and there hasn't been much shift in the assessment, is kind of assessing the older standards versus the newer standards, but even under the old standards, success wasn't very strong across the state and county. Yeah. So what we're doing is looking right now at what instruction looks like in our social studies classrooms at the high school, what the unit designs look like for a more authentic learning experience, so it's not facts and figures. And I think we've done a lot of good work moving away from that. So we're going to be doing some more inquiry into that assessment, and I think there's rumors that that assessment will be changing here shortly. But I think there's a lot of questions to ask around that, and I appreciate you asking, because we are working a lot in science and social studies, even though we talk a lot about literacy and mathematics here.
Thank you.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, I'm referring to some of the questions that I put out. You said that you shifted to a new assessment, Acadian's comprehension assessment in grades 3 to 5. Is that in addition to NWEA, or does it replace NWEA?
It's in addition to, so we have our state assessments, our benchmark assessment, which NWEA, but then we have more classroom embedded assessments that are specific to foundational skills and comprehension that allows us to do additional screening and diagnostic as to where students are, so we can meet their needs as either part of Tier 1, 2, or Tier 3. So it's additional layers of assessment that's given locally, but those are readily available assessments for different districts to use, for example, the Acadians.
Okay. And just one other question, because you talked about student roundtable where the students asked for the SRT time. And the students also talked about how they, because their parents signed them up for test prep classes for the SAT, and they did better, and talked about possibly offering that as a class or something in the high school day. Is that something that we're looking into?
That's something that came up. Our students were very thoughtful in that they wanted to make sure that other students had the opportunity for a prep class. And actually last year, if you recall, FAPN had some scholarships, but the timing of the scholarships were in the spring, almost close to when they took the SAT. So I've already talked to Mr. Hall about that, about trying to see if we have some additional scholarships, as well as partnering. We have our first student roundtable meeting next week to talk about what that might look like to get those prep courses to especially our juniors earlier in the school year this year. So that's something we're definitely being thoughtful of. But the students they just warm your heart, because they're so caring about their fellow classmates, and they really do feel validated with their connection to the district and the voice that they're able to bring to improve systems. So we're very proud of them, and we're proud of the work that we're doing to try to move the district forward.
Mr. Walker?
How often are we required to distribute the state assessments, state tests?
The state is one time per
One
year.
time? Throughout the
It's
course of the year?
staggered.
Or how many different tests they have to take over the course of a school year?
So
Depends.
each grade level and subject, it varies. So at most grade levels, it's ELA and math. At certain grade levels, it includes science and social studies. But all of the state assessments, MSTEP, PSAT, SAT, ACT work keys occurs between grade 3 and grade 11, and they occur in the spring. So they occur in the month of April is where those College Board assessments occur, but MSTEP has a longer window for the online assessment. So students are either testing in April or May for those assessments. So one time a year.
Okay.
Yes.
I know we've talked for a while, and this is an important conversation. I just wanted to share one kind of anecdote or story from today's visit at the school. That kind of goes back to Mr. Walker's point about our children are learning. They are learning things. I went into a classroom, turned out to be an Algebra 1 classroom, and the first thing I noticed, there was a young man who was at the teacher's desk, and he was working on the whiteboard on a problem from her laptop. And so I went over to him, and he was smiling and beaming, and I said, well, what are you working on? And he said, I'm showing my friend here how to do this problem. And so he was teaching this other student. And I said, well, what grade are you in? And he said, well, I'm a sophomore. And it was an Algebra 1 class. And before I could ask another question, he said, I didn't do so well in Algebra 1 last year. And so I had a low grade, so I wanted to take it again. So he said, I had a D, but now I have an A. And that confidence and him beaming about his knowledge and now teaching the other students in the classroom, that confidence and his pride is not going to show up on a standardized test. Now, he's a sophomore. Next year, based on our sequence, he'll take geometry. But he'll be a junior, and you have to take the SAT. It's a requirement to take the SAT as a junior. 60% of the math on the SAT is Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Rarely do they have geometry at all. So do we change this course sequence for the students so he'll take Algebra 2 next year so he does better on a test? Of course, the answer is no, because we want him to have both the algebraic concepts and the geometric concepts to apply his knowledge. So his score might be reflected somewhat poorly on the math portion of the SAT, but the confidence he had today and that he's going to bring this entire year and into his progression, his progression of math, knowledge and enjoyment and application, that's what we measure as well. So with that, I want to thank our team for their commitment for the presentation. There couldn't be more urgency. Our instructional coaches, our teachers, our parents who are supporting their students, our tutors who are working very hard to move the needle along, and we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would also like to add that in my own research that I've been doing on the history of the development of the Common Core State Standards and the M-STEP, that I recently discovered that the M-STEP was developed in a 9-month period of time when typically we need 3 years to develop and pilot a test of that nature that is a statewide assessment. It was developed in just 9 months because there was some kind of argument, there was some state legislation back in 2014-15, and so the state decided, okay, well, let's just hurry up and build this M-STEP test. We'll build it in 9 months, we're not even gonna pilot it, we're gonna use it, but we're only gonna use it for 1 year. And then it was used for 3 years, and then it was extended, and we're still using it almost a decade later. So I really significantly question the validity of the M-STEP test itself. The questions were largely written by content area experts rather than people who actually work with third graders and second graders and eighth graders in these subject areas. So we heard the test questions described as rigorous. That's not to say that we don't want to engage our students in a high level of rigor in their learning. However, if the bar is here, just because not all of our students can get over the bar doesn't mean we aren't making progress, as you pointed out, Mr. Walker. It doesn't mean that just because we're not getting over this bar, which is set extremely high on the current MSTEP tests, doesn't mean we're not making progress. All of our students are making progress, and our students can read and they can add and subtract, even though they might not be able to demonstrate all that they know and all that they've learned and mastered on the
It might take them
test.
2 years
Yes,
to master that skill.
instead of just one, yeah. So, wanted to add that. Okay,
Those are the end of our district updates.
all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Delgado and Ms. Hendrickson and Dr. Coffin. Thank you also, board members, for your thoughtful questions. Next, we have reports from board committees. Yes, Mr. Rich.
Thank you. So our Community Engagement and Communications Committee had our first of the community dialogues. And so first, I wanted to thank the members of our community, the superintendent and his Cabinet Plus members, and the board members who were able to participate in our community dialogue last week, especially with the fantastic weather that we had that night. I know we were battling that as it was potentially the best weather we will see for the rest of the year. So, I greatly appreciate everyone who was able to attend, take part. I also wanted to thank Dr. David Dulio, the director of Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement, for being our facilitator. But I do also want to take responsibility for the fact that we did end 30 minutes prior to the posted time. That was a miscommunication and misunderstanding on my part. So I just wanted to apologize to those who attended that evening. But I just wanted to state that here. We did end at 8 instead of 8:30. However, our next dialogues will be going for that full 2 hours. And so while the full group debrief got cut short a little bit, I did hear from participants in all three of the small groups that we had attending about the in-depth dialogue that happened on our topic of budget priorities. And then we discussed the three questions in these small groups, then kind of came together at the end for a group debrief. Those questions were, over the last decade or so, public school districts have had to make cuts to programming. What might you like to see reinstated if possible? The second question was, to the extent that you're aware of our district initiatives or others, what academic enhancements might you like to see if possible? And three, when you consider athletics or fine arts programming, what enhancements might you like to see to FPS programs if possible? So this was kind of a start of the school year as we head into the budget season. Next semester, Dr. Delgado is able to kind of give an overview of what the process looks like, what's the timeline, and why are we having these discussions now. So the next dialogue is currently set for Tuesday, February 13th. So mark your calendars now. The committee is yet to decide on the topic for that dialogue, so feel free to reach out with your ideas as to what you would like the topic to be. Just a reminder that these dialogues are conversations with board members. It's not a question-answer coffee hour session. It's for actual dialogue and talking back and forth, not just with other members of the community, but with board members involved, with the cabinet involved. And so I look forward to seeing everyone on the 13th of February for our next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. And thank you again to all those who participated. Any other committee reports? Mr. Walker, did you want to share about the policy committee?
That, I believe, is coming up underneath discussion items. I can now, but I believe we can hold on to that point.
Okay, no problem. But your committee met and had discussion?
I think we met meeting before last.
Yes.
Oh, the meeting.
Not since our last board meeting, no. We have
Okay.
not met, but yes, we have met. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. My misunderstanding. Thank you. All right, with no further reports from board committees, let's move on to discussion items. First, we have the 2024-25 Section 105 Schools of Choice recommendation.
I see Dr. Coffin coming back up to the podium.
This will be the last time for the evening, I promise. So now the board has the information in your packet regarding our request. This is something the board must approve annually each year. So for 24-25, the 24-25 school year. It's really important give the board an opportunity to hear about this and make a decision early, so then we can start sharing that with our communities. So I can scroll down here a little bit just so you can see what we're looking at. Our proposed timelines is that our school of choice, so the recommendation is still as it had been last year, that we participate in intra-district, so meaning if you are already a Farmington resident and you want to transfer to another building, that this is the opportunity to be able to do that, as well as participating in Section 105, which is Oakland County only schools of choice. Looking at the dates of January 8th to February 16th, 2024. And what we're requesting is that would be a limited school of choice based on availability. And that information is in there with, one thing I did want to point out is we're requesting or recommending the K through 9th grade. Last year, if you remember, we added 10th grade as well as IB. Based on where we're at right now with our enrollment numbers, that wouldn't be the recommendation from the district, but we do feel we can support limited school of choice in grades K through 9.
Any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the review of recommended policy updates. Mr. Walker.
So as mentioned in the last meeting, tonight we would be bringing forth the recommendations from the policy committee that Miller Johnson brought forth. Again, just to briefly summarize, Miller Johnson brings forth recommendations that they get from all of their constituents, if you will, and they submit that to all of us. It's up to us to determine whether or not we want to accept those recommendations or not, and offer any other or additional recommendations along the way. And so the policy committee has done that. This is the first iteration of that, the first reading of that for the board to have over the next 2 weeks. And so we ask that folks who take the time to go through, offer any comments or suggestions about it. If there are none between now and our next meeting, then we will bring this forth as an action item for approval and submission into board policy.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms.
Wait, can I make a comment? Because there were a lot on that, and I went through, and I really appreciate the committee putting the yellow comments on the side. I thought that was very, very helpful. And so I just want to recognize you for your work, because I know that there had to be a lot of discussion going into looking at each individual one.
Yeah, we did a lot of talking, but the editing of that, I'm going to give that credit to Ms. Kathy across the way for making it so plain and easy for us to know what we need to do and where our recommendations lie. So thank you very much for your service. We appreciate you always.
Yes, Mr. Rich.
I think my only comments on this was, and I bring it up every time we have edits or anything like that, is again, just the change from, I think this one is, there's only 1 or 2 instances of it, but changing the her/his to a their, just the gender neutral singular. I think this one just has the one for the evaluation of the superintendent, but just wanted to flag that. If we're making a change anyway, might as well do that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I just want to point out that the policy committee reviewed all of the recommendations from the legal counsel to the point that was already made our recommendations for which policy adjustments we wanted to approve and or adjust. In all cases, everything that is legally required has been updated. And that this is considered the first reading for this board. If there are any comments on this, please let us know now. Is there a second reading, or will we have this come up for approval at the next meeting? I just want to make sure that's clear.
This is going to come up, as of now, this is going to come up for approval at the next meeting.
Okay, so there's no second reading. This is the first and only reading of the, that's not true, Ms. Taryn?
The second reading will occur at the time.
Okay, thank you. So we will have an opportunity to have a second reading, but we'll also be approving on that day, potentially, unless there are any changes. But I would ask that if the board could review this now to avoid us having to bring it back for another meeting.
Right, so between, if we haven't already reviewed it by today.
Correct.
Between now and the next meeting, review it in detail.
Please and thank you. And provide your comments to the chair so that he can let us know and we can make some adjustments to the final.
Thank you.
Because there's so many changes, do we vote on each individual change, or do we vote on all of the changes unless we want to flag?
Flag all of the recommendations, as I understand it.
Okay,
We'll put all of that together for one approval.
okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. It is time for public comment. During the public comment portion of our board meeting, members of the community are welcome to address the board. Each community member will have up to 3 minutes to speak. A timer on the screen will display the 3-minute countdown for each speaker during public comment. Thank you for honoring this guideline. We wish to remind our community that this is a meeting of the board held in public to provide transparency, but is not a public meeting. As a result, we will respectfully listen to your comments, but will not respond or engage in dialogue with you in this venue. However, please be assured that we are listening closely to every comment and that a member of the Board of Education and/or our Superintendent, Dr. Delgado, would be happy to speak with you after tonight's meeting to set up a time to engage in dialogue together and further address your concerns. Thank you. Oh,
Sorry.
pass these down. I'm sorry. Mr. Bill Lubaway.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I sent you a email regarding the community dialogue, which was not a dialogue, period. And I don't know why, I know why we call it that, it sounds good. I came prepared to discuss a number of budget questions that weren't answered during the budget session. And what I got was a lesson for a third grader on how you put together a budget. And we ended up discussing 3 items that somebody, not the members of the group, were interested in, which that happens too often. That you guys make up, you say it's a dialogue. The dialogue starts with, what issues are you interested in? You might as well kill those dialogues. They're, as I figured out, a waste of time. And that forced me to think through something else, which is public comments. You mentioned that somebody would be glad to discuss our public comments, but they, by and large, go unanswered. And to the extent that there are discussions concerning public comments, they're held in private, and they're not published anyplace. So who cares what the public comments are? I already know you ignore those. And I already know that when we have a discussion, following up on those, they don't get published. So it's a waste of time and effort, although I enjoy doing it. So I think in the future we'll be figuring out a way to publish those discussions and the follow-ons to those public comments in our discussions with board and staff. And secondly, we'll add in something we haven't done, which is FOIAs. When we get those results, which I don't expect will happen without a hassle, we'll also figure out a way to publish those. And then switching to a new topic, as we looked at these school statistics, that was a better comparison than it was last June. And my question always is, can you compare our district to B districts versus Oakland County's D average districts? I think we're kind of saying, well, everybody else is kind of below average. We're kind of below average.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Leboway. Next, we have Mr. Eugene Greenstein.
Well, you've got my paper before our meeting, and thank you, Dr. Delgado, for talking about tutoring. The SAT results are consistent with all the other test results, which say we're not in good shape. So getting a new test, I don't think is the problem. And if we look at the data that we've presented in the past, school-to-school data is bouncing all over the map. So if you watch the ball, it's bouncing all over. The question is, why is the ball bouncing within the Farmington Hills school system, so we can take the rest of the county, the rest of the state, the rest of the nation out of it? We have yet to hear why the ball bounces when we go from one elementary school to the next. And if we don't know why the ball is bouncing, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing to fix it, because the ball should be the same level across all the schools, or at least well-defined why it's not. We've asked about tutoring, and we know the 11th graders, we believe the SAT are 40% lack of proficiency in literacy, for example. And we heard last year that we didn't have enough tutors. So I would like to know, do we have enough tutors so that all 12th graders graduate, or let's say 95%, maybe be a little bit realistic, can graduate and read at grade level, whatever that means. I assume the tutors know what it means, so the tutors should be able to come in here and tell us whether those kids can actually all read at the same level or higher. So I think this idea that the tests are screwed up, yeah, they are screwed up, but they're screwed up for everybody. So now let's understand why our schools aren't consistent, and why between comparative schools in the county or in the state, why they're not the same. They ought to be. It's the same test. Okay, let's change topics. There were 2 knife incidents in the school system over the past couple weeks. The question is why? The question is, what are we doing so they don't happen again? And if there's knife incidents, what other kind of discipline incidents are there in the schools, and what are we doing about those? And what are the corrective actions so that we can, instead of being a victim of these issues, we can prevent those issues? And since, as Dr. Blau has pointed out, this is a meeting of the board, therefore we, as the public, hear what the board says or doesn't say, hear what the board talks about or doesn't talk about. We didn't talk about nice, we didn't talk about discipline, and we didn't talk about why each school is different and the ball keeps bouncing and they're not the same, and what are we doing about it and what are the root causes. So, as listening to this meeting of the board, how come you don't talk about important issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenstein. Next, we have Mr. Carl Mintz.
First of all, thank you, Mrs. Smith, for coming to the Israeli stuff and supporting Israel through this rough time. I'm going to get in, I want to elaborate a little off what Eugene was saying. I did not know about these extra 2 knife incidents. I went to school from 97 to 01 in North Farmington. The only time there was ever a knife incident, if I remember, there was maybe one year, maybe another year, someone just had one. I mean, didn't threaten the one, they carried it. I don't know the reasons why. But now I'm hearing there's more knife incidents. Okay, some of these schools I heard don't have police. I know we spoke about security before. I spoke with Cheryl, and I like the fact that the doors are locked down throughout the time the students are there. I agree with that. I did deliveries. I couldn't get in. That's fine. I don't want to go in. I just want to drop off the delivery. But my point here is this. You've got schools with no police there. Okay. that's a problem. If I'm someone, a student, who sees that, that's an opportunity to go after somebody I don't like. Oh, there's no cop? What are the staff gonna do? They're not gonna be able to take the knife out of my hand. I'm gonna go stick them and go. I know that sounds rough, but I have to talk rough so you guys get this. I wanna see in some of these schools, besides police, we need a couple other guards. We have ex-military who can need jobs. A staff member can possibly not take somebody down with a knife. You're gonna put their life at risk, and they're not trained. Or maybe the next time the student says, to hell with the knife, I'm gonna bring a gun and take care of a problem. And then what are you gonna do? What's the staff gonna do then? Drop the gun, please. That's not gonna do anything. We need some trained people in these schools. I don't wanna hear tomorrow that an active shooter or a student went in and just shot up a classroom. We need people who are trained. You can't just trust the police. Police can handle the paperwork. I want to see some ex-military or ex-trained people who know when there's a problem, they can analyze it, be real cool, and if it gets worse, they can handle the situation. Now, I didn't say neutralize. I said stop the threat. This is scary. Now people are bringing knives and threatening people. I haven't heard of this. I know there's this mental health awareness, and this is a problem. People are watching YouTube, TikTok, and they're like, oh, they see these people acting crazy with weapons, so they think it's funny and they're gonna do it. Please, to help these kids, we can't keep just having one cop in each school. Please put a couple more security. Instead of spending it on some other junk, spend it on some trained people who can take care of a problem in case someone pulls another knife or a gun. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mintz, is there any further public comment?
Oh, I'm kind of short here. Good evening.
Introduce.
Oh, sorry. Do you mind resetting the clock?
Ms. Kelly Goldberg.
Don't do the clock.
Good evening. I was compelled to come up here after I kind of scanned through the proposals for revising some policies, which is your first reading tonight, and I'm glad to hear you'll have a second reading. And especially after the events in Israel, I was particularly struck by the subheading threat assessment, and that what's being deleted, as it reads now, it's the superintendent will develop a threat assessment protocol aimed at addressing situations which may pose a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the school community. The goal of the threat assessment process is so the new reading will be the superintendent will take appropriate preventive or corrective measures to maintain a safe school environment. And I guess my concern is that when you have a protocol, it's something your employees train on. I work in an environment that is constantly training. We are getting updates. We are expected to know what the protocols are for certain situations, whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's a verbal altercation. Many of you know I work at a Jewish agency, and I'm very grateful that our leaders have tried to stay ahead of that curve. And I would hope, I don't know who then is making this protocol. I mean, all of the ALICE training, I would call that a protocol. And I guess I don't know if that was something that lawyers don't like the sound of, but I would just urge you to have, whether you call it a policy or a protocol, but not leave this on the shoulders of one individual, that this should be, I'm sure you have a security committee, and I'm sure you need to be a bit oblique about what those measures will look like. But I can tell you as a community member, this didn't read as vigorously as the prior policy did. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Next, we have Mr. Thomas Hall. Excuse me.
Good evening, Board. Just want to say that with FAPN, our Saturday tutoring has been underway. This is our second week, and we're happy to announce that we're still at Farmington High School Media Center, and that we are having a tremendous turnout. Our turnout really in part of the volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers that's starting off this year, and I think there's going to be more volunteers coming on board to help us out, in which that we can kind of like many hands make work light type of thing. And we're going to have it seems like it's going to be like maybe a 1-to-1 ratio of student to tutoree or tutor to tutoree, which is, I think, is fantastic. We get a lot of good volunteer involvement in which they want to do other things to enrich the tutoring process, and to and also have dialogue with administration and with board members and everything like that. And with the tutoring, that I'm noticing a lot of the high schoolers are coming in and really needing some help with that. And last Saturday, we had several 10th, 11th graders come in and say, hey, we need some help with geometry, trig, and everything like that. Even for students to come in that don't need any help, but they just like need a space to kind of study, which is I guess everybody's a little bit different, in which that, sometimes they can just study at home, or they just need to be surrounded by individuals who are studying. So I think that's like encouragement environment. And, my personal dream is to probably just expand it into probably another school, as well as Farmington, kind of like probably maybe North Farmington. I'm just thinking as for the need is there and for the convenience factor. And so just let everybody know we are on the way. And also to say that the SAT, ACT training, we are going to, it's kind of too late right now to actually promote it for like this month. So we're going to backdate to like second or third week of November, right before the 2 weeks before the holiday, so we can have the December 4th, so we can have enough time to actually prepare for it. So, we're trying to put some things in place in which we can offer resources for the kids. So, stay tuned. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there any further public comment? Any further public comment? Seeing no further public comment is now closed. Yes, Ms. Smith.
Point of information, I usually do not speak during public comment because we're here to listen to learn, not listen to defend. I'm not here to defend anything that I have done in the past couple of days since the incidents that have happened over in the Middle East and in Israel. Yes, I did attend both services yesterday because we are a predominantly Jewish and we have a majority of Middle Eastern students here. With what has taken place over in the Middle East and over in Israel is very painful. And it hurts my heart because I am the mother of 3 children and have buried 3. And I know what it's like to see what this is going on, even though mine did not die of a tragedy. So I don't want anyone going back, oh, well, she's one side against the other. In the past, as a community member that's been here in the past 26 years, going on 27, we have always had something put out on our website to speak about protecting not just one group of children, but both sets of children, to let everyone know that we will not allow or permit any bullying. And I know Dr. Delgado probably has not had the time to get that together, but we will not allow or tolerate any bullying from either side. We are here as a community, not to be divided, but to service each and every child in this community. As I always, in my letters, is always, yours for children, Angie Smith. I am here for each and every child in this community. And yes, I did attend, and I will attend more because of the incidents that are taking place. And I will continue to support and look out for the children and support that country for what they are going through right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. All right. All right, we have one action item this evening, approval of the new IB Science Resource Adoption recommendation. Yes, Mr. Rich.
I move that the Board of Education approve the new textbook adoption recommendation, IBDP Biology, Chemistry, and Physics as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Rich, supported by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? These were presented at our last meeting. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Wonderful, motion passes. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. Yes, Ms. Smith. Ms. Weems from.
I move that the Board of Education approve the October 10th, 2023 consent agenda, which includes security infrastructure upgrade phase 2 and approval of minutes from the September 26, 2023 regular meeting.
Support.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Mr. Walker. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Any reports from board representatives?
Oh, I have just
Yes.
a quick
Yes,
item.
go ahead, Ms. Fox.
For FAMPN, I just want you guys to know that the AKA sorority of Farmington Hills has made a commitment to FAMPN to do tutoring during our Saturday meetings. I've talked to many of the ladies that are there. Many of them are highly educated. They're engineers and what have you, so we're very happy to have them with us. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Fox. I attended the Oakland County School Board Association meeting as you were, right?
That's right.
And they shared pearls of wisdom gathered by members from throughout the county, school board members from throughout the county. It was a very informative meeting. They did talk about parliamentary procedure and the importance of frequently revisiting our bylaws, policies, and codes of conduct to make sure that we're all familiar with those and abiding by those. They also talked a lot about developing board operating procedures in addition to the other documents that we already have, and that's already on our agenda to discuss at our November retreat. So it was really helpful to hear that additional information as we prepare for that discussion amongst ourselves about how we want to structure our board operating procedures. So it was a very productive evening. Are there any other board representative reports? Yes.
So this is not a board representative report, and I don't share the community engagement committee, but I wanted to say thank you to the community engagement committee. One, for starting the committee in the first place a couple of years ago, I think. Mr. Walker, that was your idea. I really value what this board does in terms of trying to connect as much as possible with the community. I especially appreciate productive public comment from folks who have some really great suggestions for how we can do some things differently, for folks who have some really good feedback about what we need to be looking at with respect to policies. Thank you so much. We take that under advisement. I've sat here, though, for 15 meetings in a row and listened to people criticize this board for not valuing public comment and not listening to public comment. And I want to say, for the record, I don't appreciate it at all. at all. I am an advocate for public comment. I have always been an advocate for public comment, and appreciate every last person, including those I disagree with, who constructively provide us with feedback. Each of us have sat here for 3 and 4 hours at a time, listening to our community. Because we don't have an opportunity to engage, we've decided that we're going to spend hours hosting community dialogues. I have personally hosted web calls with the community, 40 and 50 people at a time, for hours, multiple times, to listen to my community. I really don't appreciate that at all, and I'm tired of hearing about it. Each member of this board have spent hours after these meetings having discussions with members of the public to address concerns. I have personally responded to thousands of emails in a very detailed manner, addressing concerns. For the 2 years that I was president of this board during the pandemic, I responded to each and every email I ever received on behalf of myself and this board, comprehensively responded. So I don't want to hear someone say that we don't respect what our community says to us and that we're not listening. You're entitled to your opinion, but I don't appreciate at all this constant untruth. Each one of us have spent an inordinate amount of time after these meetings, separate private meetings, multiple times, lunches, coffees. That does not spell we don't care or that we're not listening. None of us are paid to do that or this. Please respect the fact that we are trying to do the best that we can for our community, and we are listening. It's not constructive at all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wills. As there are no additional board reports, board representative reports, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you all.